Really warm welcome if you've just joined. My name's Subhadra Mehti. I'm one of the team at the Buddhist Centre, and tonight it's going to be Sanghajit leading the class, and I'm here to host the class. So in 5 minutes or so, Sanghajit will be coming along and continuing in our drop-in series that we started last week. So last week we started a 5-week series, but it's a drop-in, so it does, if you weren't here last week, that's fine as well. Or, so you can always watch it on catch-up. And the format of the class is, in a moment, we'll start with a little mini meditation. Just to settle us, just for 5 minutes or so. Then Sanghajit will come and he'll give us a Dharma talk. That means a talk on an aspect of Buddhism. And then we'll meditate following on from that talk. Then we'll have a little break for 5 minutes. At 5 to 8, and then at 8 o'clock we'll come back, and Sanghajit and I will both be up front, and that's a chance for you to ask us any questions, and we'll try and respond to those questions. And then that'll take us up to 8:30, and then we'll have a little ritual verse to end the class, and a mantra to end the class, and that'll finish at 8:30. And so I'm here with, as well as Sanghajit, with Danny and Hiril and Ipalit. They're the crew, and they'll be, I say the crew, but actually it's a team really. We'll all be participating in the class together. We'll all be meditating together and creating the atmosphere here in the Shrine Room at the London Buddhist Centre. And hopefully that atmosphere will perfume out to you at home or wherever you are participating in the class. So good. So having said the format of the class, what we're going to do now is we just have a little mini meditation, just settling. It will just be for 5 minutes or so. So if you'd like to get yourself comfortable, so if you're on a chair, then just have your feet flat on the floor like this. If you're on the sofa, just put a little cushion behind your back if you can, so that you're nice and upright. And if you've got meditation cushions at home, then you can sit on them. We're going to dim the lights here, and you can dim your computer or phone lights down as well. So we'll dim them right down. Even good. Danny's dimming them down. Good. Keep going, Danny. Great. Good. Okay, great. So now just closing your eyes. Maybe just taking a few deeper breaths just to arrive. And just start to settle, let go of the activities of the day. And the best way to settle, I find, is to really tune into the sensation of contact of your body with the floor, with the cushions or chair. And see if you can get a sense of your weight dropping down into the chair or cushions and into the floor. So the base of your posture is becoming more and more steady and imperturbable, like a mountain. And then from that stable base, the rest of your torso rising up, your spine rising up through its own natural curves. Your head just poised. And then see if you can allow your face to soften a little bit more. See if you can allow your hands to soften a little bit more. And your belly. And now just tuning in to the sensations of your body breathing. Just following your breath with your attention. We'll just do that for a moment or two. And now you can just allow your attention to broaden out again to your whole body and its sensations, sounds you can hear. Allowing awareness to be broad, spacious. And when you're ready, opening your eyes and bringing the meditation to a close. Good. Oh, good. Really good, everyone. So, good. So, welcome if you've just joined us. I'm Subhadra Mehti. We've just been having a little mini meditation to start the class. And now I'm going to swap places with Sanghajit, and he's going to give us a Dharma talk, and then that will be followed by a meditation. Then we'll have a little break from 5 to 8 till 8, and then there'll be a chance for you to join in and ask questions. And we'll both be responding to those questions. So see you in a little while.
Hello, hi. Thank you very much, Subhadramati. And I just want to say before I start that, Subhadramati is a long-standing friend of mine, and just, I've really enjoyed doing this class with you the last week and now this week, and just being around you, I I feel a lot more confidence, and I just really appreciate your experience and also just your kindness. So great to be with you. And hi everyone. So welcome from me. I'm Sanghajit. And tonight, how to have a beautiful mind. I'm going to try and explore this statement, and as I've come to think of it, a relationship between beauty on the one hand and mind on the other. And together we'll also have a look at a Buddha called Ratnasambhava, which rather than a historical figure is an embodiment of enlightenment, but on a more archetypal plane. Ratnasambhava is one of a set of 5 Buddhas that form what we call a mandala, which is like a set or a group which have a collective significance as well as an individual significance. So the 5 Buddha mandala is a set of symbolic images that are, and they're fairly crucial to any real sort of deeper understanding of what enlightenment really is, of what Buddhism is. However, I should say what I mean by mind, because Buddhism has a very particular concept of mind. So I should try and clarify that first. And the first thing to really say about mind is that mind precedes experience. It actually precedes everything. So anything we can talk about or point to, it is being preceded by mind. It's like the lens through which we're comprehending literally everything. So that's an important thing to recognize straight away. The mind that we have will fully determine the world that we experience. And just to sort of take an example, one that we're familiar with, I thought to look at feelings. They're just one aspect or dimension of your mind, your feelings. And these feelings are just constantly arising, aren't they? Our senses come into contact with something like a sight or a sound. It could even be a thought in our mind. And out of that contact arises a feeling. And those feelings are fully influenced and conditioned by the mind that precedes them. So whether we feel pleasure or pain, it's fully down to the mind that's been conditioned to respond prior to that contact. So mind precedes experience. One way to illustrate this is to look at how different people have completely different feelings arising out of virtually the same stimulus. So for example, if I see a large wave breaking along a beach, I would be really excited. And, I grew up on the east coast of Australia where, if there was big waves, that meant a lot of fun and adventure because I grew up surfing and trying to find the best waves on the coast was like our, mine and my friend's life mission. We were just always trying to hunt and find the best waves with the smallest crowds. But somebody else would actually be terrified by large crashing waves and the loud noise and the white water and the real potential to drown you would make plenty of people want to get right back to a safe distance. So same thing, different feelings arising based on the mind that we have. So the way that we then respond to those feelings then also then sets up the conditions for the next set of experience, and our mind's just continually sort of conditioned in this sort of constant way. And then, of course, when I'm having lots of interactions with people, it starts to feel really complex, actually. It's not just a simple like a wave. All the time our conditioned mind and preceding mind is coming into contact with lots of other conditioned and preceding minds, and different feelings are pouring out in communication and in connection with people. And so what we tend to do in that situation is we try to make sense of it somehow. And the way that we try to make sense of it is what my partner Michelle calls putting people in a box. And we get very concerned to protect our feelings and have the feelings that we want to have. So we sort of fix people into some sort of comprehensible and reliable unit, but it doesn't work. We end up, later getting shocked when they do something that we didn't expect. After this talk, we're going to go through a metta bhavana practice, and we'll be looking a bit more in detail in meditation about working with feelings, particularly our likes, our dislikes, and then this sort of strange midpoint where we're having feelings that they're very neutral and don't have any sort of grab on us either way. This practice of the metta bhavana is completely indispensable for a Buddhist. It's very, very crucial. So for me, a constant source of sort of contact on my senses is my 3 children. Hello, if you're watching. Robin, Eden, and Suri. They're 8. Eden soon to be 7, and Suri's 2.5. And just to give you a bit of a snapshot of a part of our life, we can take the example of bedtime. And I'm sorry, but I'm ripping off, some of you know Michael McIntyre here, because he's got this fantastic joke about how you feel about your kids when they're awake, and then how it changes when they fall asleep. So when it's late and you're trying to get them to bed, especially when they're really, say they're really tired and restless, or they're excited, or they want your attention, or they're anxious, or they're moody, or, just the run-of-the-mill, plain reluctant about going to bed and ready for a battle about it, they're a real handful. And you can imagine the feelings that start to arise. And I can sort of feel it now, even sort of imagining it. And I would say that those feelings are on the spectrum of sort of something like slightly painful, all the way up to like borderline madness and like frustrated rage. But sort of no amount of yelling, go to sleep, actually works. Strange to relate. But then the minute they're asleep, the feelings almost instantly change to something else completely. And you'll have to see this skit by Michael McIntyre, because he acts it all out and it's hilarious. And the parent goes in to see the sleeping child and just experiences them as beautiful, and you're so proud of them, and you're so there's so much love. But then you have that situation where you realise that you've gone in too soon to check on them, and they're starting to wake up and ask more questions, and anyway, check it out. So it's very two-way, isn't it? What the situation I'm describing, it's very different depending on, it's very different for them in the feelings that arise in them, depending on the dad that they get. So if they get the stressed out, tired dad who just wants it over and done with quickly, versus say the holiday mode dad who's happy to read stories and talk about the day, well then they have very different feelings as well. So when you start to look at the way we're all conditioning each other, and this is obviously in quite close proximity with children, you can see that you can't really speak of mind as being so separate and divided into lots of units like we like to think, like into people. So there's no real my mind and your mind so separately, like we want to think that there is. And, so even if you look quite superficially at the way we influence each other and are being influenced by other people, even a superficial glance, you can see that our mind is not really what we think it is. It's actually very mysterious and very quickly departs from what we can coherently talk about and ends up looking more like something like the way I was thinking of it was like a flow of energy forces or waves of energy. You could see the mind more like forces of good or forces of evil in operation, or even just benign forces that just exist for no obvious reason. And it also becomes a very key piece of understanding when we're trying to imagine the Enlightenment in the Buddhist sense. The Buddhist tradition has always maintained this idea of rebirth. It maintains that our mind doesn't just start at age 0 and sort of go until we die and then stop. The Buddhist tradition has always talked about rebirth as mind forming part of a flow of experience that continues from life to life, generation to generation. Last week, Subhadra Mati talked about the figure of Akshobhya, which is a Buddha image representing many things, but probably most famously for representing the Buddha, the historical Buddha, sitting in the earth-touching mudra, or the bhumi spasha as it's called. Subhadra Mati talked about this and how just before the Buddha's enlightenment, the demon of doubt sort of tried to knock him off his course and sort of scupper the whole enlightenment. And that demon that we actually like to call him Mara, it tries to sow seeds of doubt in the Buddha's mind. And then the Buddha just touched the earth like this, and he said something like, "No, Mara, I don't have doubt anymore. I will gain enlightenment. And the earth right here under my fingertips can testify that I've been working as a force for good for countless lives. And therefore it's a natural progression of my mind to sort of go into the unlimited sphere of Buddhahood." This is something like what he would, I'm imagining he would sort of internally say. But to me, this gesture, what the Buddha is actually basically saying is, it's not really me gaining enlightenment. Rather, it's the enlightenment process or flow that has been naturally unfolding continually. It's that process that's now taken form and been realised. At least thinking of it that way around would be a better way to think of it. So the Buddha, before he was enlightened, he had the same reflexive consciousness as us, but he was already incredibly and mysteriously well developed as a human being. He had an ability to practice with great depth and conviction, and he was ultimately able to recognise this unfolding enlightenment process within mind, and then help create the conditions for it to fully manifest. So he didn't achieve enlightenment in the sense that we tend to think of achieving things. The mistake is to think of the Buddha like a normal person, like a really cleaned up and perfect person. But no, he's not really that. He is the principle of awakening realised in human form. So this is very fortunate because it also means that Buddhism doesn't just die with the Buddha when he died. The principle of enlightenment is being realised all the time, but at different degrees by different people. And we can see these forces for good working in people now, and we can learn from them. We can begin to try and help the conditions for that force for good along in ourselves and in others. So the question sort of is, so what sort of conditions might you want to create for yourself and other people? I was going to tell a short story from just something that happened at my work. I work as a palliative care nurse in a hospital. And towards the end of that, the really bad part of the COVID pandemic in the hospital where I work, there's still a large number of COVID cases in the hospital. And I had a patient on my caseload who had a recent diagnosis of bowel cancer. It was incurable, it was untreatable, he was in his 80s, he was already fairly frail. But he was somewhat stable despite this diagnosis. He wasn't dying from it when he caught the coronavirus. But then he caught the coronavirus. And when I met him, he was really breathless. He was hardly able to speak. He was really unwell. He was really suffering. And his granddaughter was with him. And she told me that he was from, a large sort of Indian family. Obviously a very close family. And even though I didn't have long conversations with this man and get to know him particularly well, I could tell from meeting him and the short conversation that I had with him and the way he was with his granddaughter that I could tell he was a good man. I could tell. Since he had COVID, the staff, they would have to wear a lot of the PPE to go in to see him, and because he was in a single room. He's naturally not as visible to staff and other patients, as other patients might be. So there was a strong chance that this man, who is very, very vulnerable and very, very unwell, might need something and not be able to ask for it for himself. And there was lots of factors why he could, all of a sudden become, seriously unwell and very distressed. So, we also had no visitors really allowed in the hospital, and that's still the case now. And but his granddaughter, who was in her 20s, decided to stay with him until the end of his life. And she just decided that she would sit with him day and night in the full PPE, mask and everything. She just couldn't, she said that she just sort of couldn't bear the thought of him needing something and not being able to get it quickly. She was completely dedicated to him and dedicated to her family as well, because she was, constantly liaising with them on the phone and speaking to this man's wife, her grandmother, all of her relatives. I asked her if she was worried about catching coronavirus herself, and she said, because this was early stages when we didn't really know what we were dealing with. We knew a lot of people were dying, but she said that she thought it was unlikely to make her die, and even though it was making her grandfather die. But she said that she doesn't have any dependents. She's fairly free, and she thought, well, if that's my fate, well then I'll take it. And so she stayed with him, and it really helped. It really, really helped this man, because things happened. At one time, I'm going to get a bit graphic here, but he vomited all into his oxygen mask, and she was able to get it off and alert the staff. Another time, his catheter blocked, and she was able to point out that his distress was unusually high and get the doctor to check him over and find the cause of the problem. So it really moved me, because she took a really heroic step, and she made a huge difference to this man in the last phase of his life. And I guess the way I was reflecting on this is that in a way, that this man, I could see he lived a very good life, and this is the best possible situation I could imagine for that man, where he's got someone completely dedicated to him, despite all the conditions. Yet, when he died, and I spoke with her afterwards, it was so tinged with sadness and loss. So even in the best situations in life, forgetting all the real suffering in the world, even in the best situations in life, we still have death, and we we can't avoid that. We still have sickness. We can't avoid that. So to me, it seems that the best thing to do really is to try and gain the biggest possible perspective that I can, and to try and broaden my perspective on this situation is requires quite a level of commitment actually, and particularly to be involved with other people who are also trying to learn that bigger perspective. People like Subhadramati. So. It's really important to be around those people who really embody that in Buddhist practice, all the time, and especially if they're a bit further along in their practice than oneself. And if you want to really find and recognise these people, you'll see it in the beauty of their actions and their speech, in the beauty of the way they operate in the world and how generous they are. So, I guess coming back to the theme, my faith in practicing the Dharma doesn't actually come from sort of like a good idea or a sort of weighing up of the pros and cons particularly. I would rather describe my response to the Dharma as just a response to beauty and a sort of just a following of that beauty. Coming across Triratna, the Triratna Buddhist order, I've just been continually exposed to a level of beauty that I couldn't have imagined before. I honestly didn't even think in terms of beauty before I started learning to meditate. If I did think in terms of beauty, it was in a really superficial kind of way, sort of consciously. But I can see with hindsight that I obviously, have always responded to beauty, and of course everybody does. So, but yeah, I've never actually asked myself, how can I have a beautiful mind? But yet, I was probably doing that in some sort of way, and so was everybody else. So yeah, moving on to Ratnasambhava, this Buddha image, and I'm just going to ask Hyrule if he doesn't mind he's going to post a link that you can click on, which will bring up an image of Ratnasambhava. This is a new concept here, where we're splitting the screen, but you'll have on one screen Ratnasambhava, hopefully. And Ratnasambhava in this image represents the highest possible perspective, and the culmination of this path of beauty that I talked about. He's an embodiment of pure beauty on an archetypal plane. Ratnasambhava symbolically represents a perspective that I have had glimpses of, but I do feel deeply connected with, while at the same time sort of feeling a long way off from as well. So Ratnasambhava, his name means jewel-born one, or jewel-producing one. In his left hand he's holding the jewel, and this jewel is called the Chintamani, or the wish-fulfilling jewel. In his right hand his palm is facing outwards, and this is a gesture of generosity. So Ratnasambhava is holding a wish-fulfilling jewel in one hand, while his other hand is extending forward like this in supreme giving and generosity. Now this represents the enlightened mind in relation to us. The enlightened mind is a true wish-fulfilling jewel, a true Chintamani, because the enlightened mind is beyond all desire and aversion and is completely fulfilled already. And then the gesture of supreme giving is that fulfilled wish, just in action, stepping out into the world. So his hands and his mudra, as we call it, is representing the fulfilled mind responding to the world. So Buddhism maintains that our sort of reactive and dualistic minds that I was talking about earlier, they're more like a covering of an underlying pure mind. So it's like we actually have an innate connection with enlightenment within our depths. So we can actually think of the Chintamani, this wish-fulfilling jewel, as being within us in our depths, rather than something outside of us that we need to go out and acquire or even develop into, or it's more like it's within. Ratnasambhava, he fundamentally represents beauty, riches, abundance that exists in our depths. So he's also closely linked with the earth and the colours and the colour yellow and the jewels, they're dug up from the depths of the earth. So it's very linked with the earth. And all sorts of archetypal treasures are dug up from the depths of an enlightened mind. Ratnasambhava is also associated with the southern quarter, with the sun, as I said. He's gold and yellow in colour. And his the wisdom that Ratnasambhava represents is the wisdom of non-discrimination. So it's the wisdom of sameness, of not having any preferences, no likes, no dislikes, no reactions. So here the sun, the sun is just shining on all, with no preference. And that's how the enlightened mind feels towards all, everything, the same, just feels the same love. Often Ratnasambhava is representing as sitting on a lotus flower carried by horses. And the horse represents, probably don't need me to tell you this, boundless speed, energy, vigour, and responsiveness and generosity. And the enlightened mind is fully at the service of the forces of good all the time, and will give very quickly and with great confidence and speed. The horse also appears in the story of the historical Buddha, and in this connection is when the Buddha left home, he rode a horse out of his home. Into a homeless life and into a pursuit of a holy life. So the horse carried him forth across this, sort of psychically and spiritually speaking, a huge threshold from home into homelessness, from safety into the unknown. And there's a real decisiveness and speed required in that sort of going forth, and this is all beautifully represented by the horse. To go forth, we have to leave a lot of old patterns and thoughts and behaviour behind, and we'll need to have a lot of us on board, all of us on board, to go forth in that kind of way. But more personally, I suppose the horse to me, out of all animals, it does stir up feelings of beauty, just from the way they move to the way they interact with people. They give great service to people in the past, particularly. They've got very rich colours, the smell of horses, and even their eyes. They have they're very attractive, beautiful creatures. Where I grew up in Australia, it was a very, very small town, tiny town. It was called Otford, and we had a tiny little primary school. There was about 30 kids there. There wasn't any shops, lots of trees, but there was these 2 horse riding farms, horse trail riding farms. So I was around horses as a kid, but I never really got into that horse riding scene particularly, but sometimes we'd go on trail rides in the holidays. And I think I was overawed by horses, actually. As a little kid, I was quite frightened of them. But I was frightened of their power and their beauty. I recently saw a video which was posted on social media by a group of people called the Farm Transparency Project. And they're trying desperately, at times quite against the odds. And they're trying to film the inner workings of animal consumption and abuse. And I saw this thing that they posted. And it was related to the horse racing industry. And they captured, really explicit sort of footage that, it's hard to watch. And they put together a set of clips relating to sort of racing horses and how they're sort of processed, from how they're sort of once they're retired, they get auctioned off to basically to pet food companies. And this is all captured by these hidden cameras. Some of these horses, they had special horse racing names, and they were famous, and had earned lots and lots of money. But then here they were, just sort of being auctioned off at a very cheap price. Some couple of $100 for a horse that might have earned their owner over $100,000. So it was obviously disturbing. I won't describe to you what the process by which they're turned into pet food. You can look that up for yourself if you want to. But yeah, I just wanted to just draw this out. I'm talking about this image of beauty on one hand, and then in the world we've got this world of horse racing, I suppose, and all that glamour and the glitz and the TV and the fame, and which is actually so closely sort of connected to like a horse holocaust of sorts. And so I can't really give that sufficient words, and that's just one animal in the world that gets processed by people, and as grim as that situation is, it's so complex and it's so not easily resolved. I really try to, and I want to support that Farm Transparency Project, because they understand that awareness is the thing that's quite revolutionary in this situation, and they work very hard not to blame anyone individually, and they just try and open up to the world what happens. And I think that's really, really courageous. I do, and I think it's really good, and I'm glad that they do it. But I also think we need more. I think we need something else if we really want to transform the world's suffering. I just don't think we can cancel everything out that's bad. We can't just cancel, because, like the example of the patient that I had, even if we took away everything bad, you've still got old age, sickness and death, and what are you going to do with that? People need a vision to strive for, and a fully enlightened vision of our potential in all of us, if we really want to wake ourselves up and wake others up and overcome the pain and distress that we can cause and we would naturally feel. So I hope that Ratnasambhava has provided something of that vision for you tonight. So thank you. Good. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just have another short meditation, about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll have a break. And I'm going to try and introduce you to this practice of the Metta Bhavana a little bit. I'm sure plenty of you people know it. And so if you find yourself back in your whatever meditation posture you've got there, perhaps you can take one last look at Ratnasambhava on your computer screens or your phones. And just try and let that image wash over you. In the same way that we did in our little mini meditation with Subhadramati, we can try and tune into the sensations in our body. Really relaxing and letting go. Feeling the contact with the floor. Feeling the base that you're sitting on. Feeling your belly, just letting go, relaxing the belly. Relax the shoulders, relax the face. And noticing the breath moving in, moving out. Try to really tune in with the rocking sensations that it creates, the breath. How it gently moves us. And in a way now recollecting yourself. Recollecting the energy in your body. The potential in your body, in your mind. Wishing yourself well. Wishing yourself that abundance. Wishing yourself that energy and vigour in pursuit of the good. Stay with the sensations of the body. Letting the wishful fulfillment just wash down into the sensations of the body. And without too much effort or trying to think this one out, just bring somebody to mind who you naturally feel warmth for. A good friend. And then in the same way, just wish them well. Wish them happiness. And notice the feelings around your heart when you wish your friend well. May our friend be free of suffering. May our friend make progress. Just try to let those intentions drop into your bodily sensations, particularly around your heart. See what you feel when you wish your friend well. And now we're going to try and extend that well-wishing, that kindness out into the world around us, like a great wave, gradually moving out from our heart. Until it reaches all beings, everywhere. Wishing all beings well, and wishing them to be free of suffering. Just keep relaxing and letting go, feeling the sensations in your heart, or in your throat, or in your face. And we wish all beings well. Thank you very much. Okay, well done. We will have a short break now, just 5 minutes, back at 8 o'clock, or whatever that time that is where you are in the world, 5 minutes time. And yes, we'll be taking questions. So have a think about any questions you have about anything, particularly if it's related to the talk. And Subhadra, Matty and I will both be here, and we'll try to answer them for you. Okay, see you soon.
Good. Okay, good. So welcome back, everyone. And thanks very much, Sanghajit, for really introducing this very rich figure of Ratnasambhava, the Buddha of beauty, and his horses. As usual at this class, this is about 20 minutes or so where you can ask us questions, and Hiril, who's on the team, will relay the questions and we'll do our best to respond, won't we, Sanghajit?
Yeah.
Okay. And particularly, as Sanghajit said, you can ask questions in a way about anything, but particularly questions about Ratnasambhava, the Buddha of beauty, what does that mean? Would be great if you've got any questions on what does it mean, what does an archetypal Buddha, what does that all mean? So anything on that would be great. Any questions yet, Hiro?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, sometimes it takes a little while to formulate them. Don't be shy.
So we've got a question in from Marcia.
Okay.
Marcia says, I found the concept of collective mind fascinating. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Okay, so Marcia, talking about collective mind. Did you say collective mind?
Maybe, yeah, I'm not sure. I can't remember.
Maybe Marcia, if you could just say a little bit more where that came up, just to help us along a little bit. It's fun. It's hard. This is where it'd be nice to have you right here with us all. But is it the question about how we affect each other with our minds? Is that the question? Maybe you could elaborate a little bit, Marcia.
Yeah, I was talking particularly about the way, in relationship to feelings, how feelings sort of flow into another, but they're always preceded by mind, the mind that we have. So, and the mind that we have, is largely influenced by the people around us, and has been influenced by the people of our lives. So, so I was sort of trying to draw out that principle of, well, it's not really your mind in the sense that you think it is. It's not so fixed to you. You're not so in possession of it as you might think you are. It's much more of a shared. Well, it's a lot more blurry about where it starts and finishes.
So Marcia's just expanded, and she has said that yes, it is about how we affect each other.
Yeah. I think that's good. It's a very good question. It's a very, very good thing to realise that basically we're not as individual as we think we are, especially kind of this side of enlightenment, as it were. One thing our own teacher, Bhante Sanghajit, just said, he said, until your sort of dharmic spiritual momentum's very, very kind of there's a great deal of momentum behind it. He said basically other people will have more influence on you than you have on them. Okay. And I think it's kind of humbling to realise that, but it is as well to realise it, because then it gives you a sort of realistic picture. A Buddha would have an independent mind, so even if the Buddha was surrounded by people, I don't know, in a very poor state of mind, the Buddha's mind would be able to rise above that. But not being a Buddha, as long as you're not a Buddha, we will be affected. So it's as well to think in a way about the company you keep. Try and it'll help your mind to be with people, for example, that are also trying to practice to develop their mind. Yeah, good.
We've also just got one other question from Marcia as well.
Thanks, Marcia. Your questions from Marcia.
Just asking if you could also talk more about this idea of mind being a lens for reality. Okay, do you want to say a little bit about what you meant by that? So this is about mind, a reality sort of mediated through the mind, Marcia's asking.
Yeah. Well, yeah. One thing I didn't draw out was how in Buddhism actually there is sort of two distinctions of mind. There is an absolute sort of mind, sort of beyond all conception. There is an absolute mind. And then there's this more relative mind, which we're more likely to experience. And what was I going to say about that then? So what was the question?
Well, I wonder if what you meant was, well, maybe if you think in an everyday way that we know that our state of mind, we think that there is reality there objectively, but our state of mind really affects it. I always think, I've given this example before, but it's quite a good one. Reading Anna Karenina, the novel, there's this kind of lovely passage. If you know the story, there's this lovely passage where Levin's in love and he just finds out that his love's reciprocated and he's so happy. He walks out into the street and everything just seems harmonious and beautiful. He talks about this like flock of birds just flying down, and there's a little loaf of bread like cooling on the windowsill. There's some children playing on the street, and everything is not just beautiful but sort of a piece. It's sort of harmonious. And then later on there's the very same scene, more or less, but this time it's seen by Anna. So I hope, I always feel a bit bad because it sort of slightly gives the story away, but you probably know that Anna dies in the end, at her own hand, as it were. She kills herself in the end. So just before she's about to commit suicide, she's also in the street, and everything just looks ugly. It's the same, it's a very similar scene, but she's just like, she thinks, oh, look at those horrible children, like eating that, that horrible ice cream, everything just looks ugly to her and disjointed. But it's a very, very similar scene. It's just a scene of the street in Russia. So, and we all know that, if we've just had an argument with somebody, then, it doesn't matter that you're looking at a beautiful sunset. It somehow looks ugly. If you're in harmony with whoever you're with, everything can just seem beautiful. So I think, and that's what you mean by the sort of relative ordinary mind. It's what we think of as objective is much more mediated through our states of mind. If our mind is full of kind of ill will and resentment and grumpiness, the world will, it's not just that the world will look one way, it's even more than that people will respond, people will shy away from us, and then we think, oh God, they don't like me, well, I don't like them either, and it all just sort of perpetuates. Whereas if we enter the world in a state of positivity, generosity and so on, it'll look more beautiful, but people will respond to us, will be drawn to us. Actually, even saying enter the world isn't quite right, because it's much more fluid. It's not that there's a real world that we're walking onto, like a stage set. I think that's what you were getting at. Well, we're affecting our world, and our world's affecting us all the time, isn't it? And
sometimes even these concepts, you start to look at them and you realise that they don't even quite fit the bill. Even that's the best we can do is explain it like this, but it's still, you've got a lens, and it does get quite complicated and difficult to understand. But there is that is the basic thing, isn't it? That your mind will precede your experience. And I didn't go into ethics too much, Buddhist ethics too much, but that's where that starts to come in. Behaving in a particular way, speaking in a particular way, will have a particular outcome, and that fits very sort of well-regulated patterns. If you're acting and speaking from a place of hatred or anger, or you will suffer. You will suffer from that.
Good. Thanks.
Great.
Anyone else?
So we've got a question from Oliver.
Hello, Oliver. There's always a question from Oliver, which is marvellous.
So Oliver's question is, when Buddhism talks about finding beauty in everything, is it only in natural things, such as nature, animals or humans, or also in unnatural things too, for example, computers or clothes?
Okay, so this is where can beauty be found? I would say beauty can be found anywhere, actually. And again, we think of beauty as something objective, but it's our eyes that see it, isn't it? If we're sensitive enough, we will find beauty, well, kind of in the eye of the beholder, to quote that sort of phrase. And so we'll find beauty in nature, we'll find beauty in art, we'll find beauty in, as Oliver says, clothes, inanimate objects. I think what's particularly, for me, when we're talking about Ratnasambhava, the Buddha of beauty, Ratnasambhava is also connected with, well, Shraddha, which means faith, but not faith in the sense of a sort of blind belief, but faith in the sense of connecting with meaning in life, faith in the sense of connecting with what you said, that sort of innate sort of jewel-like quality. So I think that's the real meaning of Ratnasambhava, and the real meaning of where we'll see beauty, where we'll see, well, beauty in the actions of the granddaughter you described, looking after her grandfather. That we've all got the capacity for that. We've all got the capacity for responsiveness in itself, and we know that when we see it. So I thought that was interesting the way you illustrated that, because you told us of something beautiful, but also we were all moved by that. I'm sure we know beauty when we see it.
Yes, yeah.
You know, and that's what we're trying to sensitize ourselves more and more to. So it's not just aesthetics; it's kind of beauty, truth, and goodness all as a trio that we're trying to allow our hearts more and more to respond to.
Yeah, I sort of had a wonder if there was a question within that question about, you know, is the Buddha able to see beauty in things that, you know, like violence or something, for instance?
Yeah. Things we would think of as ugly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think from a certain point of view, yes, that probably would be true, but also too that.
So how would that work?
I don't know.
Things that we think of as ugly.
Well, I think he said, you know, the Buddha, you know, the enlightened mind would always be recognizing and identifying the goodness and the beauty in wherever it is within a situation, even if it's a really grim situation. Perhaps through just a bigger perspective. That's why I was sort of trying to point to that thing about having a bigger perspective. Sometimes it's not about sort of seeing things as beautiful on their own level. It's about seeing beauty from a bigger perspective. You know, seeing a situation from a bigger perspective sometimes helps you, you know, have a better appreciation, even for things that you might find, you know, atrocious. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I think there's a whole discussion, isn't it? That, but I think maybe the key to it is that a sort of bigger perspective. It's not just sort of prettiness, is it, that you're looking for at some point?
No. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Great. So we've got a question from Paul. Paul asks if Ratnasambhava represents a quality of reverence, and whether there's a link there with the arising of the bodhicitta. Okay, so
Paul, that's a question. So is Ratnasambhava connected with reverence? And then there's another question about the bodhicitta, which we'll explain what that is. I think that's a really good question, isn't it? So reverence is like the response of metta when it looks up, in a sense. So you could say that. So metta, this quality of loving kindness, is essentially responsive. So when metta, for example, meets suffering or meets violence, metta would become, as it were, compassion. When metta comes across a joyful situation, then it becomes a quality called mudita, which is sympathetic joy. And when metta encounters someone who's, say, wiser than oneself, then metta becomes reverence. So I think that would be connected with Ratnasambhava. And so that's the first bit. And then Well, the bodhicitta, to use this term, so the bodhicitta is like the will to enlightenment, and the bodhicitta really is represented by Ratnasambhava's jewel, this wish-fulfilling jewel. If we only knew it, enlightenment would be the answer to all our wishes. It's that funny thing, you know, in fairy stories where people get granted wishes and they never know what to wish for, and then they end up wishing all these silly things, like, and they got Midas and his daughters turned to gold. And, you know, people often in fairy stories wish for the wrong thing. And fairy stories have got truth in it. We're always wishing for the wrong thing.
Yeah.
If we really knew what would really make us happy, we would be enlightened on the spot. Because what would really make us happy would be enlightenment itself. What would really make us happy would be the wish that everyone else was happy as well. And the bodhicitta, the will to enlightenment, or the heart of enlightenment, something like that. And that's what the wish-fulfilling jewel represents. So I think that's a very, very interesting question of what do we wish for?
Yeah. That's really good. I'm sort of pleased that it sounds like the reverence was stirred up as a Paul, and I think what with all these Buddhas of the mandala, they should all stir up reverence, but perhaps that reverence is taken on a slightly different flavour, I suppose, depending on those images and the way you respond to them, and with Ratnasambhava, it's easy to kind of imagine to just sort of revering that level of energy and vigour, for instance. Whereas another Buddha, it might be something else.
Yeah. Good. Time for a couple more, probably.
Great. So I think we've got quite a good one from Oliver again. So,
okay.
Oliver asks, whenever you are experiencing something unpleasant, is it worth remembering the mantra that experience is preceded by mind?
Okay, so whenever you're experiencing something unpleasant, is it worth remembering experiences preceded by mind? Well, that might be interesting to try. Let's just think. Yes, and let's think. We want to be a little bit careful here. If that helps, then that's good. But the only caveat I would say is, let's think how to put this. Every single thing unpleasant that happens to you isn't because of your own mind. So if you get ill or something like that, the illness isn't caused by your mind, but how you respond to that illness will affect how you handle that experience. So I think it might be worth reflecting experiences preceded by mind, but as long as you don't, there's a sort of way of taking that literally and the wrong way that won't help, because it can seem too fatalistic. You can't, lots of forces are operating as well as the mind. So, if I fall over and break my leg, or if something falls on me or something, that's not caused by my mind necessarily. I mean, it might be, but there could be other causes at play. But definitely, if I'm experiencing something unpleasant, one can certainly remember how I respond to this is going to. I have got agency over how I respond to this. If I get into blame, or if I start to feel like a victim and poor me and stuff, then the experience will unfold in one way. If I can, even a difficult experience, if I can respond with forbearance, use it as a way to connect with other people perhaps, then the experience will unfold in another way. Yeah. And you hear such heroic stories, don't you, of people being able to respond to the most difficult of circumstances in a creative way, in a way that sometimes I think, God, I don't know if I could,
It does just make me think of the Metta Bhavana. We didn't actually do the stage where we bring to mind the difficult person and wish them well. But hopefully when you do that practice in its fullness, the metta bhavana, and you bring to mind the difficult person, it does actually give rise to some painful experience, because that's practicing with that and you learn to then I'm not saying you're necessarily going out to evoke painful experience in yourself, but you're practicing meeting difficulty with a degree of love, because you know that love is the thing that actually works in the face of difficulty, in the face of pain.
That's good. So the painful experience, if you can work with that creatively, strengthens the mind, is what you're saying.
That's right.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe one more?
Great. So I've got another question from Marcia. Marcia asks, I'm just curious on how the archetypal Buddhas came to be, and where she might be able to read more about them as well.
Well, there's actually, there's a great place to read more about them. I should have remembered this before. So there's Triratna has a publishing house called Windhorse Publications, and every single week they give away a free ebook. Oh yeah, Ippoli's leaping to publish the link. So every single week they give away a free ebook, and I've just read today that the free ebook this week is called Meeting the Buddha. So every single person listening, please get yourself this free ebook. It's a wonderful book by Vasantra that introduces you to loads of archetypal Buddhas. But not only that, it's got pictures of them, and not only that, it does talk about how they arise, and I go over that a little bit last week. So if you want to re-listen to that last week, I do a bit of an introduction on it, but maybe just briefly to say that these archetypal Buddhas, they arose in the minds of meditators after the Buddha passed away, when they would have been reflecting on his qualities. So you could imagine that somebody meditating, reflecting on the Buddha might have thought, gosh, every time I met the Buddha, it was just like I was meeting someone golden who, in his presence, I just felt the sort of abundance, and I felt like, I could do anything, and I felt like, all my sort of petty-minded judgmentalism sort of fell away. And then as that person was meditating on the Buddha, who they probably would have seen perhaps a sort of golden figure, a bit like Ratnasambhava holding a jewel. Or somebody might have said, when I was in the presence of the Buddha, I just felt so fearless, and then another archetypal Buddha could have arisen. So that's the way I think of them. Another way of thinking it is they're the personifications of these qualities. So if you think, well, what would generosity look like if it was embodied? Then you could think of Ratnasambhava. Yeah. Good. So good question. So we probably need to wind up with the questions there, because what we're going to do is we're going to finish with a little ritual verse and mantra, but I'm just going to say one more thing first, which is, again, it connects very well with Ratnasambhava, this Buddha of generosity and abundance, holding a jewel in his left hand and this gesture of giving in his right hand. And I'm often very struck with how this mudra, one hand connects with the other. And generosity and abundance is very much the spirit behind the London Buddhist Centre. That's the culture we're trying to create. We're trying to create a culture of generosity rather than a culture of exchange. And this is reflected in the way that we offer our classes here. So we offer them freely. We're here tonight just because we like talking about the Dharma. I like doing that together. Sanghajit, as you've heard, has come here from his national health job, from his partner and 3 children. I haven't had so far to come, just from the community upstairs. But, we've come as an expression of our Dharma practice. And if you want to join in with this culture of generosity, A simple and helpful way to do that is by making a donation to the Buddhist Centre, which then, of course, we kind of recycle, as it were, just to help the Dharma reach more and more people, especially at this time of crisis. We're so happy we've been able to reach so many people all over the world. So if you'd like to make a donation, I think Hyril is posting the link. And what we're suggesting, if you can, is to think about a £10 donation. But you can, of course, give more, or you can give whatever feels right to you. Good. So, and then another way of kind of in this spirit of this culture of generosity, we end these Monday night classes by a verse in call and response called the Transference of Merit and Self-Surrender. That means any merits that we've accrued by our practice of listening to the Dharma, talking about the Dharma, may that go to all beings. So I really invite you to join in with this ritual verse. It's in call and response. And then at the end of that, Sanghajit is going to start us in the Ratnasambhava mantra. So the figure of Ratnasambhava is what generosity and abundance, enlightened generosity would look like. The mantra is what enlightened generosity would sound like. So I do encourage you to just join in that mantra with us. And then that's how the class will end. As the mantra fades away, the class will end. And then we'll see you next week when we explore the next archetypal Buddha. So we're going to dim the lights here, and transference of merit and self-surrender in call and response. May the merit gained.
May the merit gained.
In my acting thus.
In my acting thus.
Go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings.
Go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings.
My personality throughout my existences.
My personality throughout my existences.
My possessions.
My possessions.
And my merit in all three ways.
And my merit in all three ways.
I give up without regard to myself.
I give up without regard to myself.
For the benefit of all beings.
For the benefit of all beings.
Just as the earth and other elements.
Just as the earth and other elements.
Are serviceable in many ways.
Are serviceable in many ways.
To the infinite number of beings.
To the infinite number of beings.
Inhabiting limitless space.
Inhabiting limitless space.
So may I become.
So may I become.
That which maintains all beings.
That which maintains all beings.
Situated throughout space.
Situated throughout space.
So long as all have not attained.
So long as all have not attained.
To peace.
To peace. Om Ratnasambhava Trom. 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 Om Ratnasambhavajram. Om Ratnasambhavajram. Om Ratnasambhavajram.